Cambuslang ʻkæmbəsʻlæŋ is a suburban town on the southeastern outskirts of Glasgow, Scotland. It is within the local authority area of South Lanarkshire and directly borders the town of Rutherglen to the west. Historically, it was a large civil parish incorporating the nearby hamlets of Newton, Flemington, and Halfway. The town is located just south of the River Clyde and about 6 miles southeast of the centre of Glasgow. It has a long history of coal mining, iron and steel making, and ancillary engineering works, most recently Hoover, Tata Steel Europe's Clyde Bridge Steelworks and other smaller manufacturing businesses continue, but most employment in the area comes from the distribution and service industries. History. Cambuslang is an ancient part of Scotland where Iron Age remains loom over 21st century housing developments. The local geography explains a great deal of its history. It has been very prosperous over time, depending first upon its agricultural land, then the mineral resources under its soil. These were jealously guarded by the medieval church, and later by the local aristocracy, particularly the Duke of Hamilton. Because of its relative prosperity, Cambuslang has been intimately concerned in the politics of the country and of the local church. Bishop John Cameron of Glasgow, the Scottish King James I's first minister, and Cardinal Beaton, a later first minister, were both rectors of Cambuslang. This importance continued following the Protestant Reformation, for then until the Glorious Revolution a stream of ministers of Cambuslang were expelled, or were reinstated, according to whether supporters of the King, Covenanters, or Oliver Cromwell were in power. The religious movements of the 18th century, including the Cambuslang Walk, were directly linked to similar movements in North America. The Scottish Enlightenment was well represented in the person of Rev. Dr. James Meek, the minister. His troubles with his parishioners foreshadowed the split in the Church of Scotland during the 19th century. The manufacturing industries that grew up from the agricultural and mineral resources attracted immigrants from all over Scotland and Ireland and other European countries. Cambuslang benefited at all times from its closeness to the burgeoning city of Glasgow, brought closer in the 18th century by a turnpike road, then, in the 19th century, by a railway. In the 21st century, it continues to derive benefit from its proximity to Glasgow and to wider communication networks, particularly via the M74 motorway system. Its increasing population posed problems, over the centuries, of employment and housing as well as of schooling and health, not all of which have been solved. In this regard, it is fairly typical of most Scottish towns. Cambuslang F.C. were founder members of the Scottish Football League, whose most notable achievement was being the runners-up of the Scottish Cup in 1888. They folded, but a new team, Cambuslang Rangers F.C., was established. Governance. Westminster Cambuslang is in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West constituency for elections to the House of Commons at Westminster. Margaret Ferrier won the seat for the Scottish National Party in 2015, replacing Tom Greatrex of the Labour Party. Holyrood Cambuslang was originally in the Glasgow-Rutherglen constituency for the Scottish Parliament at Holyrood. In 2011 the boundaries were redrawn and the new constituency renamed simply Rutherglen. In the 2016 elections, Claire Hawkey won the seat for the SNP with 15,222 votes, giving a majority of 11.4%, replacing James Kelly, who had been elected both in 2007 and 2011. South Lanarkshire Council. The councillors elected for Cambuslang wards in the 2007 local elections were: Ward 13 Councillor David Bailey, Councillor Russell Cleary, Councillor Claire McCall, Ward 14 Councillor Walter Brogan, Councillor Pam Cleary, Councillor John Higgins. Councillor John Higgins subsequently died on the 29th of December 2007, and a by-election was held on the 6th of March 2008. This was won by Richard Tullett. Geography. Cambuslang is located on a lengthy bend on the River Clyde, southeast of Glasgow. The town is accessible from the nearby M74. The nearby A724 links to Glasgow city centre and Hamilton. The town is also accessible by car from East Kilbride by the A725, A749 and then the B759. The town's railway station, Cambuslang, lies on the Argyll line between North Glasgow and Lanark. The Reverend Dr. John Robertson, minister of Cambuslang Kirk, described it in the second statistical account of Scotland 1845. It is bounded by the Clyde on the north, which separates it from the parish of Old Monkley, and by the Calder on the east, which separates it from Blantyre, by part of Blantyre and Kilbride on the south, and by Carmunnick and Rutherglen on the west. Quote, "The highest points in this low-lying parish are Deckmont Hill and Turnlaw Hilft. There are remains of an Iron Age fort on Deckmont. The land slopes gently downwards to the northwest to the River Clyde. The Clyde can overflow the lower parts." Dr. Robertson is rather more optimistic, suggesting that the town is traversed by a romantic brook running into the Clyde. He describes the course of the brook as a romantic gorge. This is nowadays a park. Landmarks. Cambuslang has an interesting range of churches, public buildings, schools, industrial and commercial buildings. Its domestic buildings range from 19th-century mansions, villas and tenements to modern flats and detached houses, along with sheltered and nursing homes. Sites. Cambuslang Park spans 27 acres, encompassing the contrast of open park land and the boggy glen, which is a steep tree-lined ravine, containing a complex network of pathways. The park also features a pond, sport pitches, woodland areas and the bandstand, which is a natural amphitheatre, near where the famous Cambuslang Walk took place in the 18th century. Education. There is a range of schooling in Cambuslang, and a history of further education colleges, although the latter no longer have a presence in the town. Schools. Primary schools in Cambuslang include St Charles's Primary School, St Cadoc's Primary School, Westcotes Primary School, James Iton Primary School, Cairns Primary School, Hallside Primary School, Parkview Primary School and St Bride's Primary School. Secondary schools in Cambuslang include Cathkin High School, Trinity High School and Rutherglen High School, for pupils with additional support needs. Some parts of Cambuslang are within the catchment area of Stonelaw High School, which is situated in Rutherglen, the adjoining town. There is also Uddingston Grammar School, only one train stop down on the Motherwell via Bells Hill line. Colleges. Cambuslang College of the Building Trades was a specialist college established in the mid-20th century, but it gradually expanded the trades and academic subjects taught. It became Cambuslang College of Further Education in the 1960s. It gradually expanded its provision at its East Kilbride campus, and had facilities in Hamilton and Wishaw, but retained a substantial annex on Hamilton Road in the former Gateside School. It renamed itself South Lanarkshire College in 2000. In 2008, the Cambuslang campus closed and all South Lanarkshire College facilities were moved to a new, custom-built campus in East Kilbride. South Lanarkshire College has links with the University of the West of Scotland, Hamilton campus, a degree-awarding higher education institution, 3 miles away in Hamilton, so that local students can progress through to degrees. Early schools in Cambuslang. There has been a parish school in Cambuslang at least since the Reformation, and probably before that. The schoolteacher was appointed and paid by the heritors, though he also charged fees. Free primary education came with the Education Act for Scotland. The original Cambuslang Public School can be seen on Greenleys Road, where it is now Greenleys Care Home. It had been for some time the Cambuslang College of the Building Trades, which became part of Cambuslang College. An even earlier school is now a Gospel Hall in Bushy Hill Street. The Cambuslang Subscription School of 1848 provided basic education to the children of miners and weavers in return for a few coppers. It was attractive to those who did not like the influence of the gentry and the minister on the parish school. Transport. There are 3 railway stations within the boundaries of Cambuslang. Cambuslang itself on the Argyll Line section of the West Coast Main Line, Kirkhill on the Newton branch of the Cathcart Circle, and Newton, which is situated at a junction serving all of the aforementioned lines. Several bus routes pass through Cambuslang, with First Bus Glasgow currently operating most services between Lanarkshire and Glasgow. Several private hire taxi firms currently operate out of Cambuslang too. National Cycle Route 75 passes through Cambuslang, and extensive cycle lanes were added to the main street in 2016, although these were to prove controversial. Notable people who have either been attracted to Cambuslang, or who have gone out from there to make a mark on the world include saint, a king, a queen, a cardinal, a bishop, a lord, a famous manufacturer, a garden designer, at least 3 significant clergymen, a famous retailer, a miners' leader, a leader of the RAF, a physicist, several poets, at least 1 writer, an award-winning journalist who has interviewed a pope, a princess and a president, 2 historians, a pop singer, a senator from Argentina, several world-famous actors and a few famous boxers and footballers. Caddick. St. Caddick, also called Cadow or Cattig, reputedly founded a monastery on the site of the present old parish church in the later 6th century. He is the patron saint of Cambuslang, where there is a modern primary school named after him. His feast day is the 25th of September. In medieval times, Caddick was called on for help by deaf people and those suffering from cramp. He was a Celtic saint, previously a prince of Glamorgan, who brought succor to the native Christians against the invading Saxons. Cambuslang is at the northernmost reach of the Welsh-speaking Brythons, so he may well have visited here in his wanderings, or in an effort to secure help against the Saxons. He had travelled to Ireland, to Brittany, Rome and Jerusalem, from where he brought back 2 altar stones that had touched the Holy Sepulchre. The Europe he walked through was being battered by the barbarian invasions, so it is not improbable that he managed to reach Cambuslang. However, as no mention is made in the legends of an expedition this far north, it might have been a disciple, or a pilgrim returning from Glamorgan with a relic, who established the church at Cambuslang. Caddick was cut down while serving mass by a Saxon raiding party at Benevena, most probably near Weedon in Northamptonshire. St. Caddick was prestigious enough in his lifetime for local chiefs to have recourse to him to settle disputes. This reputation lasted well into the Middle Ages, where solemn bonds and oaths were sworn over his remains. Just before the Reformation, a wealthy Cambuslang notable expressed in his will a desire to be interred with the ashes of St. Caddick in the parish kirk. David Dale was a Scottish industrialist and philanthropist. His efforts to establish a cotton spinning factory at Flemington failed, but he was very successful as co-founder of the new Lanark Mills in 1786. Dale owned the estate of Rosebank in Cambuslang, which he used as a summer retreat from his townhouse in Charlotte Street, Glasgow, where he retired and lived until his death. The estate was sold after his death to the Caledonian Railway Company, which divided it in two to accommodate the new railway. The half to the north of the railway line, including Rosebank House, eventually became Rosebank Industrial Estate. The southern half was sold to Thomas Gray Buchanan, a Glasgow merchant related to the Buchanan who established Buchanan Street in Glasgow, who established a country retreat at Wellshot House, but his son Michael sold off the lands to build suburban villas in the 1860s. James Meek. Rev. Dr. James Meek was minister of Cambuslang from 1774 until his death. He had been dean of the chapel at Glasgow University, when the rector was Edmund Burke and the professors included the philosopher Thomas Reid. He was moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland in 1795. He read the entry for Cambuslang in the first statistical account of Scotland. The cool, objective account in his report of the Cambuslang Walk remains the prime historical source for that event. He kept a detailed journal and register of the weather for each day over 29 years, with remarks on weather and events throughout Britain and the world. This journal is still quoted in modern histories of the weather. He is buried in the old parish church kirkyard, just inside the gate. There is some evidence from Welsh chroniclers, using place name analysis, that King Arthur was a prince of the northern Welsh speakers of Strathclyde and that he fought his last battle against the invading Saxons at Cambuslang. William de Cambuslang, Bishop of Dunblane. Mary, Queen of Scots, is reputed to have crossed the Clyde at the Flyers Ford as she fled to England from the Battle of Langside in 1567. The ford is situated where the Kirkburn enters the river, below the bridge near the supermarket. David Beaton was rector of Cambuslang from 1520. He was appointed to this post by his uncle, James Beaton, the Archbishop of Glasgow, and was a prebendary, which means he lived off the tithes and never lived there, leaving the work of a parish priest to a vicar. William Hamilton of Gilbertfield lived in Westburn and Gilbertfield. He read a metrical abridgment in 18th-century Scots. If Blind Harry's poem The Actes and Deeds of the illustre and valiant Campionshire William Wallace on Sir William Wallace, whose 17th-century castle remains, though in ruins. He corresponded with Allan Ramsay and his poetry was praised in an epistle by Robert Burns, where he referred to him as Gilbertfield. Claudius Buchanan was born in Cambuslang to the schoolmaster and died in Hertfordshire. His maternal grandfather had been converted at the Cambuslang Walk. His studies at Cambridge were supported by John Newton, the anti-slavery campaigner. His books and publications seeking to strengthen the Christian presence in India resulted in the setting up of an educational and ecclesiastical structure. Jane Austen, in one of her letters, professed to have loved these books. He was honoured for his missionary work by Glasgow and Oxford universities, and he seems to have made enough money in India to fund several prizes to promote missionary activity back home. John Claudius Loudon, a famous gardener, was born in Cambuslang to a respectable farming family. He wrote the Encyclopedia of Gardening in 1822, and invented a flexible iron bar sash which made possible such monumental greenhouses as the Palm House at Kew Gardens and the Crystal Palace. He also laid down the prototypical semi-detached house, to satisfy the needs of the emergent and aspirant different middle classes. Sir George Burns, shipping magnate and co-founder of the Cunard Line, resided at Rosebank House after David Dale's time. Sir Thomas Lipton of tea fame lived in the Johnston Villa in Cambuslang, which was named after his mother's family. His aunts lived in a detached villas in Wellshot, now the North Street Health Centre. He often drove in style in a carriage and fought to Glasgow. Jimmy Jackson was a Scottish-Australian footballer. Dr. David Forbes Martin was born in Cambuslang on the 22nd of June 1906, the son of a local doctor. He was educated at Alan Glen's School, then the Royal College of Science, London. He was a physicist and radiographer who moved to Australia in 1927 to take up one of the first posts in radio research there. He contributed to the development of coastal and air defence radar for Australia during World War II. He was elected Fellow of the Royal Society of London in 1950. Robert Wilson, opera and concert singer with the D'Oyly Cart Opera Company and recording artist with Parlophone and HMV. Air Vice Marshal John B. Wallace came from Cambuslang. He was Deputy Director General of Medical Services, Royal Air Force from 1961 to 1966. Robin Jenkins' most famous novel is The Cone Gatherers, much studied in Scottish schools. Sir Ian McGregor, malariologist, led British research in tropical medicine at the MRC laboratories in the Gambia. Mick McGahey was a Scottish miners' leader who had worked in the mines of Cambuslang. There is a 2005 memorial in memory of the men, women and children, many of whom died whilst working in the pits and collieries of Cambuslang, also to the memory of Mick McGahey at the east end of Main Street. Duncan Munro Glen, as well as being a prolific poet and historian, is Emeritus Professor of Visual Communication at Nottingham Trent University. Through his editorship of the magazine Arcos, he has been a vigorous promoter of Scots literature, becoming a friend and early champion of, among others, Hugh MacDiarmid and Ian Hamilton Finlay. He was born and brought up in Westburn, Cambuslang. Among his 150-odd publications he has produced the definitive modern history of Cambuslang, along with a collection of Cambuslang poets. His own poetry deals with friends and fellow poets, relatives, Scots history and the history and landscape of Cambuslang. His poetry has been translated into Italian. He was recently awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws by the University of Paisley. John Fallon was goalkeeper for Glasgow Celtic and one of the Lisbon Lions. The RT Rev David Lunan was brought up in Cambuslang and became moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland in 2008. Mike Watson, previously a Labour life peer as Lord Watson of Invergowrie, was given a 16-month prison sentence in 2005 for willful fire-raising. Though born in Cambuslang in 1949, Watson moved early to Invergowrie near Dundee. Robert Crawford, Scottish poet and professor of modern Scottish literature at St Andrews University, was born in Bells Hill and raised in Cambuslang. He was educated at Hutcheson's Grammar School in Glasgow, Glasgow University and Oxford University. While there, he wrote a poem called Cambuslang. Midge is a pop singer, formerly performing with Slick and Ultravox, and a leading campaigner against world hunger, including Band Aid and Live Aid. He was born James Ure in Cambuslang on the 10th of October 1953 and was awarded the honorary degree of Doctor of Letters at Dundee Abbotay University in October 2005. Brendan O'Hare is a musician formerly performing with Teenage Fanclub and Mogwai. Patrick Harkins is a TV and film director and writer, with his most noted work including Taggart and Casualty. Scott Harrison, the World Boxing Organization featherweight champion for 2002, was born in Bells Hill on 19 August 1977 and brought up in Cambuslang.